August 21st, 1942, the night the jungle spoke back. August 21st, 1942, just after midnight. The edge of the Lunga perimeter, Guadalcanal. The jungle is alive in a way that feels hostile. Cicadas screaming, damp leaves shifting under unseen movement, the air thick with rot, sweat, and cordite. Moonlight barely penetrates the canopy. Every shadow feels armed. Lieutenant Colonel Kaineo Ichiki, Imperial Japanese Army, stands crouched behind a line of palm trees, his uniform already soaked through. His binoculars rest and used against his chest. He doesn't need them. He knows what's coming next. Across the shallow creek ahead lies the American line. U.S. Marines. Ichiki has been told they are inexperienced. Soft. Men who rely on machines and panic when the darkness closes in. Men who will break when screamed at, rushed, overwhelmed. He tightens his grip on his sword. This is how Japanese infantry fights wars. A sudden whistle cuts the night. The attack begins. Japanese soldiers surge forward, boots splashing through water, bayonets fixed, voices rising into a terrifying, full-throated charge meant to shatter the enemy's soul. This tactic has broken Chinese armies again and again. It is meant to crush morale before bullets ever do. But something is wrong. Instead of panic, the darkness ahead erupts in disciplined violence. Machine guns open up in overlapping arcs. Reflective tracers slice the night. Flares burst overhead, turning the jungle into stark white daylight for a heartbeat at a time. The Marines are not running. They are not shouting. They are waiting. Ichiki watches in disbelief as his men fall in rows. The Americans adjust fire calmly, methodically. Mortars thump with practiced rhythm. Artillery, registered hours earlier, walks its explosions directly into the charging formations. This is not how Western troops are supposed to fight. As the attack collapses into chaos, Ichiki realizes something unsettling. The Marines are not reacting. They are executing. This night, which will later be remembered as the Battle of the Tenaru, marks the first moment Japanese commanders begin to understand a truth they were never trained to accept. These Americans are different. Months earlier, in Tokyo, Imperial General Headquarters had reached a confident conclusion. The Americans lacked spiritual strength. Japanese military doctrine taught that victory was decided not by material, but by will. The Japanese soldier, raised on Bushido, was conditioned to embrace death as duty. American soldiers, by contrast, were believed to fear pain, fear loss, and fear sacrifice. They fought for pay, not honor. For survival, not destiny. Intelligence reports reinforced the belief. Americans were described as individualistic, undisciplined, dependent on supplies and comfort. Cut them off, exhaust them, frighten them, and they would collapse. That assumption followed every Japanese commander into the Pacific. And now, on Guadalcanal, it is dying in the mud. Captain Charles Chuck Brush, U.S. Marine Corps, crouches behind a sandbag machine gun position just beyond the creek. His ears ring. The air smells of burned powder and crushed vegetation. He hasn't slept properly in days. Malaria pills sit bitter on his tongue. But his hands are steady. Around him, Marines move with quiet efficiency, passing ammunition, checking sectors, adjusting fire. No one is screaming. No one is running. They've been trained for this. Japanese doctrine emphasizes centralized control. Marines fight differently. Small unit leaders, sergeants, corporals, are empowered to act. Decisions are made in seconds, not minutes. Japanese commanders watching from the tree line cannot see this clearly. What they see instead is terrifying consistency. Every charge meets the same response. Every breakthrough attempt is sealed. Every gap is filled. When dawn finally comes, the jungle reveals the truth. Hundreds of Japanese bodies lie scattered before the Marine lines. Lieutenant Colonel Ichiki will not survive the day, but his death matters less than the realization spreading through Japanese command channels. The Americans did not break. They did not retreat. They did not even appear shaken. In the days that follow, Japanese officers begin filing reports that sound cautious. Phrases once unthinkable begin to appear. The enemy's morale is unexpectedly strong. They recover rapidly from surprise. American machine gun fire is precise and sustained. These are not words of defeat, but they are not words of confidence either. For the first time, Japanese commanders are forced to confront an enemy that does not conform to their worldview. The Marines do not fight like Europeans. They fight like professionals who expect chaos and prepare for it. Guadalcanal is only the beginning. More night attacks will come. More charges. More attempts to break American will through shock and sacrifice. But Japanese commanders have already learned something vital in the darkness near the Tarawa River. Fear does not work the way it used to, and the men wearing eagle, globe, and anchor insignia are not the fragile soldiers Imperial doctrine predicted. They are something far more dangerous. They are calm. They are stubborn. And once they dig in, they do not move. Lessons that should have been obvious. How Japanese commanders misjudged the Marines. The jungle along the Tarawa River is quiet again, but the silence feels different now. Heavy, uncomfortable. What happened here cannot be explained away as luck or accident. Japanese commanders know it. They just do not yet understand why. In the days after the failed assault, surviving Japanese officers move cautiously through the wreckage. Rifles lie twisted in the mud. Bayonets remain fixed and used. The bodies tell a story that no doctrine manual prepared them for. This was not a defeat caused by hesitation. It was a defeat caused by preparation. Reports begin moving up the chain of command, from regimental headquarters to senior officers newly arrived from Rabaul. Each report carries the same troubling theme. The Americans did not respond like Western soldiers were supposed to. Major Masao Tamura, an intelligence officer attached to the 17th Army, pores over after-action accounts in a makeshift jungle headquarters. Oil lamps flicker against bamboo walls. Sweat stains the papers beneath his fingers. The language is careful, almost restrained. The enemy demonstrated strong fire discipline. Small unit coordination exceeded expectations. Night attack did not produce psychological collapse. Tamura pauses. Psychological collapse was supposed to be inevitable. Imperial Japanese doctrine had been shaped by decades of fighting in China, where shock tactics and relentless pressure often broke opponents quickly. Banzai charges were not mindless. They were designed to overwhelm the enemies well before physical destruction became necessary. Against the Marines, that formula failed. And failure of doctrine is more dangerous than failure in battle. The roots of this misjudgment go back years, long before Guadalcanal. Japanese officers studying American forces before the war focused heavily on culture, not training. They believed individualism weakened cohesion. They believed comfort dulled endurance. They believed a society that valued life could not fight one that glorified death. What they failed to understand was how the U.S. Marine Corps trained for war. Marine boot camps emphasized exhaustion, repetition, and stress. Officers were taught to expect chaos. Enlisted men were conditioned to act when plans collapsed. Initiative was not punished, it was demanded. Japanese soldiers, trained to endure hardship as proof of honor, struggle to reconcile this. If suffering is meant to separate the strong from the weak, why are the Americans still standing? The question goes unanswered. By September 1942, higher command begins issuing revised assessments. The language changes subtly, but meaningfully. Americans are no longer described as spiritually inferior. Now they are labeled stubborn, resilient, dangerous when cornered. These are not compliments, but they are admissions. Japanese commanders are beginning to understand that the Marines are not winning because they lack fear. They are winning because they expect fear and function anyway. Guadalcanal drags on. Reinforcements arrive. Casualties mount. But the lesson from the Tarawa River spreads quietly through Japanese ranks. The Marines will not collapse from shock. They will not flee from noise or blood. They will not abandon the fight simply because logic says they should. This realization forces Japanese commanders to confront an unsettling possibility. If shock does not work, and fear does not work, then this war will demand far more than courage. It will demand endurance. And endurance, they are beginning to suspect, is something the U.S. Marines possess in frightening abundance. October 12, 1942, the first full measure of American persistence. The humid air of Guadalcanal presses in from all sides, dripping with sweat and anticipation. October 12, 1942. The Japanese positions along the Iwo River, near the ridge the Americans have dubbed Bloody Ridge, lie shrouded in darkness. Mist curls through the palms, and the scent of wet earth is sharp against the stench of rotting casualties from previous skirmishes. Colonel Tadashi Nakayama crouches in the mud, listening. His men are tense. Each breath seems louder than the last, each snap of a twig amplified in the pre-dawn quiet. The Americans are not visible, but Nakayama knows they are there because he has seen what they do. Last night, a patrol was cut down not by panic, but by calculated fire. The Marines do not retreat. They probe, they measure, they exploit. Their movements are precise, disciplined, frighteningly efficient. Nakayama scribbles notes onto his field report, the words heavy with disbelief. Even after taking losses, they do not falter. Their resolve is inexhaustible. Across the ridge, Sergeant Daniel Dan Harper leads a four-man Marine patrol. They move quietly through the underbrush, rifles at the ready. Mud squelches beneath boots, but Harper's men step with purpose, adjusting positions based on each rustle, each flicker of movement. No hesitation, no panic, only action. A Japanese squad emerges from the tree line, attempting a flanking maneuver. Harper's men fire a precise burst. The squad collapses, leaving Nakayama's men stunned from the shadows. This is not luck. This is systematic, ruthless discipline. For the Japanese, the pattern is unmistakable. Every night attack, every probing maneuver, every push and pull of the line demonstrates an adaptability that they have never faced before. The Americans are learning, fast. They are adapting, responding, improvising. Earlier, Japanese doctrine had relied heavily on shock and awe, charges meant to shatter morale before bullets could. But now, Nakayama notes, shock is irrelevant. Marines do not panic. They do not flee. They absorb loss, reorganize, and strike back. The reports trickle up the chain of command. Language changes. Stubborn enemy becomes relentless, then unbreakable, then finally, in the most private memos, fearsome. Even when artillery shells rip through positions, even when a squad is wiped out in a single burst of machine gun fire, Marines regroup. They tend to the wounded. They adjust their positions. And they advance. Colonel Nakayama writes in frustration. They fight without hesitation. They return even when logic says withdrawal is necessary. Their determination is unnatural. It is during these moments, in the suffocating heat and endless mud, that Japanese commanders first begin to fear that they are encountering not merely soldiers, but a different breed of warrior. The Japanese soldier, trained to embrace death as honor, expected Western soldiers to crumble under the weight of fear. Instead, the Marines thrive on adversity. They use chaos as an ally, not a threat. Nakayama glances over the ridge at the faint glimmer of American foxholes. Flares from earlier engagements still drift lazily upward. He can hear voices, not panic screams, but calm commands. Orders barked with authority, executed with precision. This is what terrifies him most. The enemy does not fight recklessly. They fight smart. They fight as a unit. They fight in ways that Japanese doctrine cannot anticipate. By the time the sun breaks through the canopy, casting jagged shadows over the devastated ridge, the Japanese officers understand a sobering truth. These Americans are not easily defeated. They are persistent. They are adaptive. And for the first time, the commanders are forced to consider that the U.S. Marines are capable of sustaining what their own soldiers could not imagine enduring. Nakayama folds the report carefully, knowing it will reach headquarters. He knows that every word, every observation, will challenge assumptions that have guided the Imperial Army for decades. And he knows, deep in his gut, that this is only the beginning. November 20th, 1943, Tarawa, when respect was born in blood. Previous _section _text. The sun rises slowly over the coral horizon of Tarawa. November 20th, 1943. Waves crash against a beach littered with coral and broken timber. The Pacific light glints off the sand, illuminating trenches carved into the rocks and bunkers bristling with machine guns. Japanese commanders had fortified this island with every expectation that it would be their fortress, a place where American troops would falter and break under fire. Colonel Takeo Kanemoto paces in a sandbag bunker near BDO Point. His men are silent, crouched, waiting for the expected American landing. Morale is high. Pride is palpable. They believe in their preparations. The beach is narrow, the coral reefs treacherous. Any assault should be a nightmare for the Americans. Then the horizon changes. Small shapes ripple through the surf. Higgins boats, landing craft filled with Marines, pushing through chest-deep water. The first waves hit mines and barbed wire, but do not stop. Explosions throw water into the air, yet the Marines keep coming. Lieutenant Robert Bob Jenkins, a Marine squad leader, wades forward with his men. Water churns around his knees. Bullets strike the waves in showers. Corpses float, obscured by surf. But the men do not hesitate. They fire. They move. They regroup, all under relentless enemy fire. Their training, their discipline, their instinct, everything honed in the heat of Guadalcanal and New Georgia, now carries them forward. Colonel Kanemoto watches in disbelief. The first wave is decimated. Yet the Marines do not retreat. They continue to advance, climbing over bodies, navigating treacherous coral, and pressing toward his defenses. This is not chaos. This is controlled, calculated aggression. He scribbles in his notebook. June 15, 1944, Saipan, The Strategic Awakening. Previous _section _text. The morning sun cuts through low-hanging clouds over Saipan. June 15, 1944. From the observation posts along Mount Tapasho, Japanese commanders survey the sprawling beaches below. Sand dunes are littered with the detritus of defensive preparations, trenches, barbed wire, bunkers, and artillery pieces aimed seaward. They believed the island would hold. They believed that the combination of terrain, fortifications, and troop discipline would stop the Americans in their tracks. Lieutenant General Hideyoshi Obata watches the first wave of U.S. Marines approaching. Higgins boats punch through the surf, their ramps dropping as Marines surge forward, weapons ready. Kanemoto's lessons from Tarawa echo faintly in memory, yet he believes the lessons were unique to small, fortified islands. Saipan is different. It is larger, more complex, more defensible. Major Haruto Sakai, overseeing a coastal battery, notes the American advance. The Marines wade through water under heavy fire, but they do not falter. The beaches are a killing ground. Yet every group of Americans seems to find cover, regroup, and push forward again. Each assault becomes a calculated dance of aggression and adaptation. Colonel James Jim McLean, leading 2nd Marine Division units inland, moves methodically through the terrain. Mortars fire from hidden positions. Flamethrowers and demolitions clear bunkers with precise timing. The Americans coordinate assaults with artillery, air cover, and small unit leadership. It is methodical. It is relentless. It is terrifyingly effective. From the Japanese perspective, reports begin circulating in hushed tones through command channels. The Americans absorb losses beyond expectation. Their small unit leadership allows flexibility in every engagement. Even under heavy fire, they reorganize and continue attacks. Obata reads these reports with a growing sense of unease. The words once used to describe stubborn resistance now hint at a new reality. The U.S. Marines are not simply determined. They are systematically dismantling the Japanese defensive strategy. Japanese officers begin to discuss strategic implications privately. Airfields along the island could soon serve as launching points for raids against the Japanese home islands. Supply lines are at risk. For the first time, defeat feels not like a possibility, but a probability. Meanwhile, on the beaches, Sergeant Franklin Frank Wallace coordinates fire teams, adjusting positions based on enemy movements. Corporals call and flanking maneuvers. Artillery observers mark positions for precision strikes. Every element of Marine doctrine is in action: decentralized leadership, rapid adaptation, and unyielding persistence. By evening, Japanese positions are crumbling. Obata, moving between command posts, cannot conceal the tension on his face. The lessons from Guadalcanal, Tarawa, and other Pacific engagements converge into one undeniable truth. These are not soldiers who will break under pressure. These are soldiers who will endure, adapt, and return again and again, regardless of cost. One officer quietly mutters in the command tent, "If they can fight like this here, on Saipan, what hope do we have for the homeland?" The Marines are more than an enemy. They are a strategic force capable of threatening the Japanese heartland. Fear, for the first time, begins to enter the minds of Japanese commanders, not for themselves, but for the empire they swore to protect. Saipan is not merely a battlefield. It is a wake-up call. And by its end, every Japanese officer present will know that their earlier assumptions about American soldiers, soft, fragile, morally weak, were not only wrong, but dangerously so. The Pacific War is changing, and the U.S. Marines are at the center of that transformation. February 19th, 1945, Iwo Jima. Fear takes hold. February 19th, 1945. Dawn breaks over Iwo Jima. Smoke and ash hang heavy in the air, curling from pre-bombardment fires that have already scarred the volcanic terrain. Japanese commanders, including Lieutenant General Tadamaki Kurabayashi, stand in reinforced bunkers carved into the black sand and lava rock. Every vantage point is calculated, every tunnel meticulously planned. They expect the Americans to break. They expect waves of Marines to falter under the weight of entrenched defenses. But the first assault tells them otherwise. Lance Corporal William "Billy" Hayes wades ashore under relentless machine gun fire. Explosions throw sand and rock into the air. His squad moves forward, methodically, covering one another, using small craters and ridges as improvised cover. Each bunker they encounter is met with flamethrowers, grenades, and demolitions. The Japanese defenders fight fiercely, yet the Marines adapt to every trap, every ambush. From his command post, Kurabayashi observes the precision. Every squad moves with autonomy. Decisions are made instantly, without waiting for orders. Japanese officers note in private journals, "Even when we believe positions are neutralized, they return. Their advance does not falter, even under fire that would break a lesser army." Marines dig in where necessary, regrouping after casualties, pushing forward with the same relentless energy that had defined their campaigns across the Pacific. Their small unit leadership undermines every rigid defense, every pre-planned ambush. The Japanese had assumed that attrition would weaken morale. Instead, it sharpens it. Colonel Masuwa Tsuji, moving along the ridges, notes that American tactics are unlike anything the Japanese have faced. They do not fight for glory or death alone. They fight to survive and to achieve their objectives, combining courage with methodical planning. Bunkers fall one by one, not because the defenders fail, but because the Marines refuse to stop. At night, Kurabayashi writes in his diary, "These men are not deterred by fear, by fire, or by death. Each wave renews the threat. We are witnessing a force that does not relent." Even as kamikaze raids and artillery bombardments attempt to slow them, the Marines adjust, using flares, suppressive fire, and coordinated movement to continue the advance. The Japanese begin to understand that the morale and adaptability of these troops cannot be broken by conventional means. By the end of the first week, Japanese commanders admit privately that the Marines are unlike any enemy they have ever faced. Fear is no longer theoretical. It is creeping into the minds of men who had faced countless battles across Asia and the Pacific. Respect, born from terror and observation, has taken root. Iwo Jima is designed to be a psychological trap, but instead it cements a truth the Japanese will carry to the last islands of the empire. The U.S. Marines are not merely strong. They are relentless, intelligent, and terrifyingly persistent. April 1st, 1945, Okinawa, the final test. April 1st, 1945, Okinawa. The largest amphibious assault in the Pacific theater begins at first light. From the decks of LSTs and Higgins boats, U.S. Marines gaze upon beaches fortified with pillboxes, artillery, and elaborate defensive networks designed to bleed invaders to death. Japanese commanders, including Lieutenant General Isamu Cho and Lieutenant General Mitsu Ejima, watch from command posts inland, confident that the island's natural terrain and well-prepared fortifications will finally break the American will. But confidence proves fragile. Captain Henry Hank Donovan leads his company ashore under a torrent of artillery and small arms fire. Despite the chaos, Marines advance in coordinated formations. Squad leaders make split-second decisions, adjusting tactics as they encounter new threats. Engineers neutralize mines and obstacles with precision, often under direct enemy fire. The Americans move as a single organism, flexible and relentless. Japanese observers note the disturbing efficiency. Reports are filed with phrases like, "Enemy continues assault despite heavy casualties. Adaptation to our traps is instantaneous." Morale appears unbreakable, even when losses are severe. The Marines' unyielding advance shocks Japanese officers used to inflicting panic with initial volleys and shock attacks. Time and again, beach defenses that were supposed to stall the attackers collapse. Positions that should have held for hours are cleared within minutes. As the campaign moves inland, Japanese commanders face an even greater reality. The Americans coordinate artillery, tanks, and infantry in ways that Japanese doctrine struggles to counter. Night raids, previously considered a Japanese advantage, fail as Marines use flares, pre-registered kill zones, and overlapping fields of fire. Small units act independently to exploit weaknesses, often before the Japanese can react. Private journals from officers describe a growing sense of dread. One notes, "Each position lost to them strengthens their momentum. They do not fear, they do not pause. We fight, but they endure and return." Even when the Japanese resort to desperate tactics, kamikaze attacks, banzai charges, and tunnel ambushes, the Marines respond with calculated aggression. Their ability to adapt under extreme stress seems limitless. By mid-April, Japanese command realizes a bitter truth. They can inflict casualties, but they cannot stop the advance. Okinawa becomes a test not of courage, but of endurance, and the U.S. Marines excel. Lieutenant General Ushijima, observing from a command post, writes, "We are not facing ordinary soldiers. These men fight with intelligence, persistence, and cohesion. Conventional methods cannot break them. Their will is beyond expectation." The Japanese had trained their soldiers to fear nothing. They had prepared for relentless defense. Yet the Marines redefine persistence. Every fallen Marine is replaced by another. Every failure is followed by adaptation. Every obstacle becomes a challenge met with innovation. Okinawa confirms what Japanese commanders had come to realize over Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Saipan, and Iwo Jima. These Americans do not fight like ordinary men. They fight like a force that refuses to yield, that learns with every strike, and that adapts faster than the Japanese can anticipate. In the quiet moments before nightfall, Japanese officers stare across the devastated landscape, realizing that the U.S. Marines are not just invaders. They are the embodiment of an unstoppable will. Fear has taken root, and with it, a grudging, terrifying respect. Post-war confessions, the enemy's verdict. August 15th, 1945. The war is over. Across the Pacific, the Imperial Japanese Army has surrendered. Generals who once commanded with absolute certainty now sit in rooms far from the battlefields, recounting their experiences to interrogators, historians, and intelligence officers. Their words are measured, careful, but the meaning is unmistakable. Lieutenant General Tadamaki Kurabayashi, who commanded the defense of Iwo Jima, speaks openly of the Americans he faced. The Marines fought not as men who feared death, but as men who understood it and refused to let it stop them. They adapted, they learned, and they persisted beyond our expectations. Colonel Takeo Kanemoto, survivor of Tarawa, admits in a private diary later translated post-war, "We prepared for courage. We expected discipline. But they had something more, an inexhaustible endurance that could not be broken by our strongest defenses or our deadliest firepower." Across debriefings and memoirs, a recurring theme emerges. Japanese commanders repeatedly emphasize three qualities: adaptability, resilience, and relentless initiative. Marines do not fight for glory alone. They do not falter when the situation is chaotic or deadly. They anticipate, adjust, and advance in ways that rigid doctrine cannot predict. Even seasoned veterans who had seen years of campaigns in China, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific confess to a sense of fear they had never known. One officer writes, "We fought all manner of enemies, yet these men were unlike any we had faced. When one wave fell, another came. When one position was destroyed, they adapted. We could not stop them, and we knew it." The words are remarkable because they strip away propaganda, ideology, and pride. They are candid admissions. The enemy they once underestimated was superior in ways that mattered most on the battlefield. Japanese historians later interpret these accounts as evidence that the U.S. Marine Corps' combination of rigorous training, small unit leadership, and relentless morale created an unprecedented combat force. Marines did not rely on the fear of death, they harnessed it. They did not require constant orders, they acted independently. They did not falter under chaos, they thrived in it. It is a verdict delivered not by their own people, but by the very commanders they fought against. And it is a verdict that has shaped the legacy of the Marine Corps to this day. As American Marines returned home, and Japanese officers returned to civilian life, one reality stood clear. The war was decided not only by industrial might or strategic planning, but by the indomitable spirit of those who refused to stop fighting, no matter the odds. The enemy's judgment is unambiguous. U.S. Marines are not simply soldiers. They are relentless, adaptive, and unbreakable. And for Japanese commanders, that truth was learned in blood, sweat, and the relentless crucible of the Pacific War. Conclusion: the enemy's final verdict. The sun sets over the Pacific, its golden light fading into the horizon, casting long shadows over islands scarred by decades of warfare. From Guadalcanal to Tarawa, Saipan, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa, the story of the U.S. Marines has been written in mud, blood, and unyielding courage. Japanese commanders, once confident in their assumptions about Western soldiers, were forced to confront a truth they could not ignore. The men they fought were not fragile. They were not easily frightened. They did not crumble under fire or despair. They adapted, innovated, and persisted where others would have faltered. Each engagement reinforced the same lesson. These Americans did not merely survive. They dominated through will, skill, and relentless determination. Lieutenant General Isamu Cho's private notes reflect this harsh realization. Courage alone was insufficient against them. They possessed a methodical persistence that could not be stopped by conventional tactics. Colonel Masuwa Tsuji echoes the sentiment. "We learned to fear the Marines not for their numbers or weapons, but for their ability to endure, to adapt, and to return again." Across the Pacific, Japanese officers came to respect and fear the Marines not as a single entity, but as a force of nature, disciplined yet unpredictable, adaptable yet relentless. They were soldiers who embodied both the human capacity for endurance and the tactical brilliance to exploit chaos. By the end of the war, the verdict was clear. The U.S. Marines had proven themselves to be relentless, refusing to break, even under the most devastating losses. Adaptive, responding instantly to changing circumstances and exploiting enemy weaknesses. Formidable, earning the respect and fear of the commanders they once underestimated. The enemy's final assessment is a reminder of what made the U.S. Marine Corps legendary. In the eyes of those who fought against them, they were not only warriors, they were the standard against which all others would be measured. And so, as history records the battles and the strategy, the names and dates, the lives lost and won, the true measure of the Marines' impact lies in the words of those who feared them most. Japanese commanders, forced to witness the unbreakable will of U.S. Marines, left a testament not just to their effectiveness, but to the enduring spirit of those who refused to stop fighting, no matter the odd. The men they fought were not fragile. They were not easily frightened. They did not crumble under fire or despair. They adapted, innovated, and persisted where others would have faltered. Each engagement reinforced the same lesson. These Americans did not merely survive. They dominated through will, skill, and relentless determination. Lieutenant General Isamu Cho's private notes reflect this harsh realization. Courage alone was insufficient against them. They possessed a methodical persistence that could not be stopped by conventional tactics. Colonel Masuwa Tsuji echoes the sentiment. We learned to fear the Marines not for their numbers or weapons, but for their ability to endure, to adapt, and to return again. Across the Pacific, Japanese officers came to respect and fear the Marines not as a single entity, but as a force of nature, disciplined yet unpredictable, adaptable yet relentless. They were soldiers who embodied both the human capacity for endurance and the tactical brilliance to exploit chaos. By the end of the war, the verdict was clear. The U.S. Marines had proven themselves to be relentless, refusing to break, even under the most devastating losses. Adaptive, responding instantly to changing circumstances and exploiting enemy weaknesses. Formidable, earning the respect and fear of the commanders they once underestimated. The enemy's final assessment is a reminder of what made the U.S. Marine Corps legendary. In the eyes of those who fought against them, they were not only warriors, they were the standard against which all others would be measured. And so, as history records the battles and the strategy, the names and dates, the lives lost and won, the true measure of the Marines' impact lies in the words of those who feared them most. Japanese commanders, forced to witness the unbreakable will of U.S. Marines, left a testament not just to their effectiveness, but to the enduring spirit of those who refused to stop fighting, no matter the odd.